8 and 6.
So Michael, share us your title as well, and then I'll share mine.
Yeah, Director of School Improvement for Canton City Schools, responsible for grades 6 through 12.
That's great. I'm assistant superintendent here in San Diego of a Epiphany Prep charter school. 15 years I worked in traditional settings as well as court schools that just ended a few years ago for me. So let's get into the pressure that we all have. We're all carrying a load in our professional lives. Tim's running this National Parents Union, but how did we fail our kids this week? How did we fail our kids this week? And I want to start with Addison's father.
Well, so let's I like that too. I would love to have that title as Addison's father and Grayson's father, right? So my failure this week, really this weekend I tried to disconnect, and I did. For the first time in a very long time, the work email didn't get opened up. I wasn't reading anything in the scope of our jobs, right? We do a lot of professional learning there, and it was great. Monday, I clicked on to the email and right, this huge long list, and it became time to get back into that grind. And in doing so, you open up the computer remotely, right, at 7:30 a.m. and I was closing it down for dinner at 7 and helping put the kids to bed by 9:30, and then opening it back up. So there's some neglect there, right? During the day, I'm not around. But then at night, when it's time to catch up, my wife, find out how things are going and so on and so forth, weren't doing that. It reached its climax today. And it went down in the Scott house today. And that's to me, that was a fail on my part. My wife does an extraordinary job of holding it down. She's been home with the kids their whole lives, 3 and 2 years. And but it's different being behind this door, right? I'm here, but I'm not here. And that was an epic fail this week, trying to play catch up. And I had good intentions, like, hey, this weekend is going to be all about Easter and family. And yeah, it went down today, but we're recovering. That's why Addison is with us right now. So we make it work, right?
That's right. We make it work. So where are you in your emails? In the triple digits yet?
So last time, and some of my colleagues are listening right now and watching. So I shared this. I was at 1,000, and now it's going down. It's going down slowly, but a lot of those I'm hoping are just some junk. So I've gone through and I've checked, and I put first things first.
Yeah.
But if anyone I didn't respond to, blame it on my mind and not my heart. I got
you. This has become therapy, everybody. We appreciate that. Hey, Don, how about you? How did you fail your kid this week?
So for me, I want to give the audience and the dads here some context. So my youngest is 18, and she splits her time between my house and my ex-wife's house as much as an 18-year-old can do, with her mom, with me, her friends. The last time I saw her was on March 30th, and that's when we moved her out of her college and back into her mom's house. And the reason that is because my ex-wife's husband is an ER nurse. And that week, he started feeling the symptoms, the shortness of breath, the fever, the coughing, and was very ill. And then a day or two later, my daughter started having the same symptoms. And so she has been quarantining. They have been quarantining for the past 14 days as recommended. So a lot of our contact has been over the phone. But where I failed as a father this week is over the Easter weekend. I went and made sure that my 82-year-old father was okay, stopped by, saw my grandchildren, but did not drop off anything for my daughter at the house. And so, I'm laying in bed Sunday night, getting ready to go to sleep, and I'm just running through the remote Easter holiday that it was. And it just dawned on me, and so I had to psychoanalyze. And for those fathers out there, I can teach you this trick, and it will save you a lot of therapy money. like, how can I make that mistake, right?
Mm.
But both my ex-wife and I, we both grew up very poor. I'm the youngest of 13 from a blended family. So, you know, we didn't put a lot of stock in things when I was young. And both my ex-wife and I, we raised our children in that manner where, you know, we had abundance of love. We had everything we need. We made sure the lights were on, food on the table. But when it came to those materialistic things, it wasn't something that we always put in the forefront of my mind. And so that's how I'm able to at least put my head on the pillow and rectify failing Antonia on that Easter Sunday.
Well, we have a lot of love for Antonia and everything going on in that household, man. We can imagine it's hard for you as a dad. I bet you know, I have two little ones, but I can imagine you never stop worrying.
Yeah, there's something to be said when you see it on the news and you read about it. But to know that, you know, you have loved ones that are possibly dealing with it. And then, you know, what you're hearing on the news about those on the front line, you know, like my ex-wife's husband, you know, he's an ER nurse and they wouldn't test him unless he paid $800 for the test. And in his mind was like, I'm not going to spend the money to just quarantine what I'm going to do anyways.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, all of those things that, you know, you kind of deal with and, you know, our daughter has asthma. So we were really worried about the respiratory part of it. But she's on the mend. And we you know, we had a good conversation yesterday and we plan on seeing each other this week.
That's wonderful. All right, Tim, this is your question.
Oh man,
How did you fail your kids this week? Oh, you know what, Tim? Hold on. John, are you in the triple digits on your email?
Oh, I stay in the triple digits. Yeah. I have become comfortable of living in the triple digits. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm calling BS on that, man. I
Yes,
worked
call
for
him
years,
out.
brother.
Call him out.
You were a machine.
All right, Tim, how have you failed your kid this week?
Oh man, you know, I didn't realize how often I fail my kids until I thought of this question. But you know what? I have so many failures this week, but I actually just had one right before this show. So, you know, same thing. I split time with my kids, with my ex-wife, and I'll be honest with you. The first, I'm getting used to eating at home more during the pandemic and being around more. I'm really never home. I barely even use half my house, and the dishes have been piling up over the last week, and the house is a mess. You know, because it's actually been lived in now. And I've got two kids who got back to my place yesterday. You know, a couple of kids with beautiful boys, both with ADHD. God knows where they get that from, you know. And I'm just trying to keep them occupied, just like every other parent right now. You know, trying to juggle my job with their schoolwork and keep them focused. And especially my boys, they need a routine. They strive on a routine, and they haven't really had one. So, and today, you know, they were getting a little bit crabby. And they you know, I had to take them off screen time because they were using that for a while. And I said, you know, I gotta pull my life together here, or you know, I'm gonna fail these kids. So first we went for a walk around the block, and I'm thinking, we get home and I created a brand new game for them. It was match the Tupperware together, and because I've had this big bag of Tupperware just hanging in the same place for about a month now that I'm gonna do something with. And I said, I took the big bag and I dumped it on the ground and I said, you know, you're gonna get screen time, but you gotta match at least 10 of these. And they sat there for 45 minutes. Haven't had so much Tupperware in the last 6 months, you know, and put those kids to work, you know. So some people might think that's I don't know if that's a failure of parenting or a genius, you know. So that's one of the many ways I failed my kids this week.
Tim, I have to do that with my socks. Maybe I can have my son help me with that.
I should do that next. That's next week.
Hey, Tim, friends with a question. Tell us about your background. What do you have back there? I see a lot of writing and drawings.
Oh, absolutely. So this right here. So I'm the COO at the National Parents Union, also at Massachusetts Parents United, and all of these signs right back here from the inaugural convening we had in New Orleans this year. So we did a convening of parent organizations, about 150 parent organizations in mid-January.
Wow.
Brought them all together to form this union. And on the second day, what we did was we did a march down Bourbon Street. They have those jazz funeral marches. And we did one for the status quo of education. And we had everyone get together ahead of time, and they wrote these signs ahead of time. So I don't really decorate. And I was tired of looking at the blackout shades. And I said, I need to decorate here. So we've got different things here, different signs from our delegates all over the country, you know, fighting for all kids. What do we got here? We got a college prep, not prison prep. We got some of my kids' artwork here. We got a Charmander there and some dandelions. Parents for a quality education, all kids in America. So that's what I've been doing, trying to, my background is a corporate background with companies like McKesson. And so I've spent the last year or so trying to operationalize this union and just working with parents. And it's become a dream job. I love it.
Well, everybody watching are going to be watching this right now on the wrestling scorecard. Michael's losing, just so you know. He's down 4 rounds with Addison. So we wish you the best, my friend. We wish we were there to help you. All right, so for me, how I let my children down, my son's down last night. My 4th grader apparently was in the bathroom with a stomach hurting because we let him go crazy. We let him go buck wild on ice cream, chips, pizza. And so I sat there and thought, could it possibly be that my 4th grader is going to have a gallbladder surgery? Like, what is going on right now, man? I can't believe I allowed that to happen. But you know what? It's life. I mean, we're just doing so much. My mother lives with us. My mother-in-law lives with us. We're all just trying to balance and support it. I'm out there working, afraid of the coronavirus, but trying to support the community. So you have all these kind of multiple weights you're carrying, these bags. And luckily today, I hugged both of my sons really tightly, just because I think I felt bad. I felt bad about yesterday. I felt that I should have done better and more about him eating better and healthier in that regard. I mean, it's, so yeah, for me, that's how I let him down this week. And I hope I can recoup the next few days before this weekend's for me. Yeah. Wow. Well, good job, everybody. This is a great kickoff to our National Parents Union. We're on live on Facebook. Make sure you catch it. Every day I see wonderful programming in the morning or afternoon. I'm able to catch up with it. I mean, you're up, what, 1 million views a week now?
1 million views a week right now, yeah.
I mean, that's tremendous. I mean, our last one got 20,000 views. And I don't know how that happened. Were you just clicking one day all like
just one day?
Kind of get those views in?
That's another way I feel my kids. I just gave them a laptop. I gave them a
I can't believe we're that popular. There's no way. There's no way we're that popular.
And we have more shows on the way too. We're hearing from parents all over the country.
That's great. That's great. So let's talk about our story, everybody. I mean, I know we talked a little bit about it last time we gathered, but I want to get into more of the race and ethnicities. And I challenge you, but at the same time, we know we're professionals. We know we have to go back to work tomorrow, but we also want to be genuine and affectionate, as I know you've all been already, about race and ethnicity. And I'll start it off if I can. I'll speak to the fact that I am Mexican. I am American because I was born from a set of Mexican parents, but born in America. And when I was growing up, this word of Chicano came out. And I'm like, well, what's Chicano? And then I heard Hispanic. I'm like, well, what's Hispanic? And then now I'm hearing Latino, and now I'm hearing Latino X.
Yeah.
So now it's this complexity that I feel old and having to wrestle with, trying to honor non-binary with gender, but also thinking, well, I know myself to be Mexican American with my parents and being first generation in this country, and trying to understand really, as now being a Catholic boy, not very good one, by the way, not very good Catholic, but then marrying a Jewish girl who was white. So now it's, how do you weave that in? Because I remember growing up as an English learner, and later on in high school times, I would be called, you're an Oreo. I'm like, what's an Oreo? You're brown on the outside, white on the inside. I said, well, wait, what am I doing to show you that? I mean, I'm poor like everyone else. I'm not living the rich life. I'm struggling with everyone else. What does that mean? Well, you're in an honors English class, or you're in this class, you're in that class, you're a schoolboy. And so I'm thinking, I'm just trying to be me and do me. I'm just trying to do better. I'm not trying to do one or the other. But it made me wrestle with this idea of, well, what is an Oreo? What is someone who may be fake to his culture? I mean, even within our own culture, there's this idea of, if you don't speak Spanish, you let them down. You let your culture down. Well, my children don't speak Spanish, and I got a lot of work to do, because I have this trauma of being an English learner saying, I don't want to be in a pull-out program. I don't want my kids to do with that ELD stuff. I hate to say it, I got to get them to learn English. I'll get the Spanish on the back end. But then I have debates with my friends. So there's just so much around race and ethnicity and culture and that I'm struggling with. So that's just a little bit about kind of what I'm thinking related to this topic. Tim, you want to jump in?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have to tell you, in the last year and a half of this job, I've never had to look at my race and ethnicity more, because I grew up in a middle class household, Irish Italian household. Even in the area I grew up with, I went to a predominantly white school, even though I lived in a probably at the time what was a 75% Brazilian neighborhood. And then to come into this role is much different, because while I had some background in education and working with families, this is my first role where I work with a Black and brown population predominantly. 95% of our National Parents Union members are Black and brown. So I have to come in looking at and talking about my position as a place of privilege, just by the fact that I'm white. I'm aware that I've had more opportunities than most people. Yet at the same time, identify with and use that to help other parents. And that's not something that was really ever brought up as I was growing up at all. I don't think it was something I was even aware of until really the last year and a half.
Yeah, I agree. I could imagine that. That was my similar experience when, like I said, that whole Oriole thing, and
yeah,
I didn't understand it. I just was like, what are you talking about? Yeah.
And it confuses people too. I can remember the very first thing we did in this job with Massachusetts Parents United was at the State House, and it was with an education bill. And I'm sitting there, and again, I come from a corporate background, and again, my background is Irish Italian. We're not that affectionate, and all of a sudden, I'm in a job where I think you've talked about this. You go into certain houses, you better eat all the food, and you have to hug.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? You hugged in my last job. You're in HR.
Yeah.
You don't hug, you don't touch anyone. I'm getting hugged, I'm getting all the loving and all that stuff. But a security guard at the State House comes up to me, and he looks at me, and he's like, I can't make sense of you, buddy. Who are you with? Who are you with? Are you here for the Blacks? Are you here for the Hispanics? And I'm like, whoa. I said, I'm just here to help the kids, man. But it's an interesting place to be.
It is. Yeah. What about you, John?
So for me, I was very fortunate that, I grew up in a city that's known as the International City, and it's very diverse. Italian Americans, Mexicans, Puerto Ricans, Slovaks, Irish Americans. I mean, you name it, we have it here. And so growing up, my parents and my siblings, we really didn't talk about race and ethnicity a whole lot. I mean, like I mentioned before, we grew up in poverty. So everyone around us was just trying to make ends meet. And, we never really looked at race and ethnicity. We just kind of looked at economic status and poverty. And I don't think it really hit me until my freshman year in college, where I had a Black female in my class, and she was the only Black female in my class. And, I would try to strike up conversation with her. And it really hit me in the face when we were walking through the quad one day after class, and the professor had said something that kind of resonated with me. And I brought it up to her, and she just stopped in her tracks, and she turned around and she looked me straight in the eye, and she says, "Would you white boys stop antagonizing me?" And it was at that moment that I was like, yeah, I am a white Italian American male in a predominantly, and when I say predominantly, I mean 96% white collegiate setting. And it was at that point where that barrier where I had to explain to her, where I grew up in the town that I was raised, that wasn't an issue for us. And it was never an issue for me or my siblings or my family. And, that was a moment where I was like, wow. And we ended up becoming close friends, and we still talk today. And we laugh about that moment where she thought I was just, that white guy trying to antagonize, the single Black female in the class. And that's when it really hit me. And it I'm glad I grew up like that. I'm glad I had that experience in college, because in the role that I'm in now and in education, it's something that's on the forefront of my mind because of the disparities that I see within race and how that plays out in the educational setting. And then I also have to remind myself that I am a white male with a title of academic superintendent, which both bring a set of privilege with it, right? And so I'm glad I had the upbringing that I had. I'm glad I have the experience. I'm glad that I stayed grounded in the roots, and I still live in that city today and raised my children here, because it really helps me see that not everybody has the same experiences as others.
Yeah, I agree. You know, your story reminds me, you know, it's a small town called Blythe, California, right as you cross the Arizona border. You know, it gets about 125 degrees there, home of the Yellow Jackets, by the way. But I would say that I grew up with, you know, the African-American Black community in my neighborhoods and the white community. I remember on the white side, it was, you know, Jeff, it was Andrew, it was Mark, you know, it was Burvey, Darvis. I mean, you know, it was us. It was our community, is how we got along. And I feel like that was an advantage for me now in my career, that I feel like I'm able to really work with anybody. Anyone who's got a heart, I'm really going to work with them and really try to understand their story. But that really resonated with me when you said that story about that girl. I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah. All right, Michael.
Hey, so John and I are from the same hometown, so I'll spread a demographic piece, but you know, kind of want to shift to like the role of my dad. You know, I am a Black African American male, you know, and there was pride behind that, right? But some of the lessons that he constantly taught me, you know, being of your surroundings. 10 and 2 when I started driving, right? You get pulled over, you know, take your insurance information out, take the keys and put them on the dashboard, and put your hands at 10 and 2 and have the window already down. Like just those pieces of just having to be trained on that, right? In which some of my friends, like I said, diverse upbringing, didn't have to think of those, right? I think the issue of privilege came out. That's a privilege not to have to be able to think of those type of entities. So, you know, my dad, you know, and my mom, you know, made it a very point, you know, be a strong Black male growing up, stand up for what you believe in, but be aware of your surroundings. So I went to Bowling Green State University in Ohio, which I remember on my first day on campus, you know, you enter into the student union. And like I said, I'm used to, you know, diverse group. And, you know, we didn't, you know, we hung with whoever we wanted to hang with, right? There wasn't that type of peace in Lorraine. But then I walk in, I'm like, well, dang, it's a very segregated cafeteria. Where do I go, right? You know, like, it was easy. I mean, I went where all the Black students were in the cafeteria, right? There's a book that's why are all the Black kids sitting together in the cafeteria, right? So, you know, having to adjust that, and then just once again though, being your authentic self. Like, so that couldn't last long because that's not how I was brought up. I was brought up just people are people, right? And you judge them by the character and the content. So my lovely lady here has just jumped into my lap. So I and it wasn't planned at all, but I want to shift a little bit, right? So my wife is white. We've been together since college, you know, 19 years strong now. So my daughter is the blend of both of us, right? And with that comes different family experiences and histories and rituals and things of that nature, right? So ultimately, you know, as I navigate race, I'm doing that now with my children too, right? So to me, I have to be that positive image as a man, but also as a Black male, because I want my daughter to carry the greatness that, you know, that my wife provides, and respecting people for people and judging them by the content of their character. But I feel doubly responsible of saying also, like, honey, you know, you're gonna have your choice of bachelors because you're that precious, right? And the same thing for my son, right? You know, this is what it means to be a good man, but also as a young Black man, because you are, along with being a white man, a biracial child, you're gonna have to navigate these pieces. And there's no playbook for that. So where have we landed? We've landed to just making sure that we both are our authentic selves and do this. Every single day, they get the best of me. And some days, we fail, as we started talking about earlier, right? But the imagery, to me, faith, praying with my children daily, showing them a strong relationship between myself and their mother. Those things to me are hugely important, and that is part of the race ethnicity conversation and having pride. But then, here you are, and you have an opportunity, and I see it now when they go to and I'm sorry if I'm going on a little bit long, but I just want to put this piece out there. Like, we live currently in a city that's not as diverse as we would like it to be. But it's interesting to see my children go to story time, for example, and they just play, right? They don't look around and say, well, no one looks like me here.
Right.
They play, so at some point, we as adults, right, do something to our children. And as long as I can, I want them to play. I want them to love people for the content of their character. And then as we need to begin to, have further adult or young adult conversations, we will. But I think it's my responsibility and my wife's responsibility to just model good humanity, good people, and spreading, the things that our families have grown up on, our traditions and that love. So that's my little bit. But it's a huge responsibility. But it's just, it's something I cherish every single day. I don't need to clean my face, honey. I'm not dirty. Yeah.
That's great, Michael. I appreciate you sharing that, Michael. And when you were saying about your wife, I remember meeting my wife, and my wife had an interaction with, God, I think we're going on 20 years as well. I hope you can hear me wonder about that number. But, she said, when you're with that one friend, and then with the other friend, you have a lot of masks. I go, masks? I'm like, what? And I later, as I became, an educator, I realized, oh, you mean code switching.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's what you mean. You mean when I go into two different languages. So if I'm with the one friend from my hometown, man, I am as naughty as they come in my language, Addison, just so you know. But then when I'm with my folks who of color, maybe of a darker persuasion, I'm a certain way because I grew up a certain way. So I code switch lingo, language. You see my hands. It's very interesting. And when I'm with my Mexican friends or Latino friends, ¿qué pasó? It's like all of a sudden you get back and you get into it, and it's interesting that at that time I thought it was about being some way, right? Why can't you just be who you are? Well, but that is who I am. I grew up in a diverse setting that I feel like I'm able to engage with multiple folks. So when you brought that up about different cultures and customs, that definitely was something that we had to go through, and I'm still going through when she experiences my world and I experience her world. So did you get that sense at all, Michael, about that code switching?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, to me, it was also just continuing to learn too. Like for me, when I, my wife's family, is close in a different way, right? So, entering into that environment, I'm still gonna be me. It is, what you see is what you get. It's kind of just how I was brought up. But yeah, my wife is kind of, the same things. When I'm around my friends, when I'm at work. So to me, it's more of a professional, personal switch. Yeah. But at the end of the day, what I've learned over these 41 years is, and just be true to, what you see is what you get. And, and the flexibility though that we have is to be able to go in and switch and to, adapt, right? A true player has, well, that's a whole nother conversation. Has the ability to adapt to their environment, right? Yeah. So, but still being true to who you are. To me, that's the one thing I want my children to walk away with is always be true to who you are, but know how to navigate circumstance, because you can be the loudest voice in the room, but if no one hears you, you're not really speaking to anybody, right?
Right.
So, I guess that's kind of, how I try to navigate things a little bit, because that's what we have to do.
That's right. Hey, John, how about that with code switching, John? Is there something there that relates to you there?
Yeah, definitely. And I can speak to it clearly because it stays in my mind. So, you know, when my ex-wife and I, when we were, you know, young professionals and we started really making some money, and she had some tenure, you know, she's a teacher as well. And I was a principal. You know, we started living life, you know, a little bit better than when the girls were younger. And I remember our youngest daughter having a conversation with us about moving out of Lorraine. And she said, you know, why can't we move out of Lorraine? Why can't we move to, you know, the neighboring suburban cities? And it was something that, you know, my wife and I, we had talked about at the time, that something we were not going to do because of all the benefits that we took from being raised in a very diverse demographic in the city. And I would say probably 2 months after that, you know, it was a Saturday afternoon, and I was at the building working, and Antonia was with me, and she was doing her schoolwork, and I was getting ready for the week ahead. And this Mercedes SUV pulled into the parking lot of the school. And this very well-dressed, white, blonde-haired lady stepped out with her son, and my daughter looks out the window, and she's like, "Oh, Dad, they are lost." And I said, well, what makes you say that? And she says, "Oh, they just stick out. Like they should not be in this neighborhood. They should not be in this parking lot. You should probably go out and see what's going on." So long story short, I did go out there, and they had got the wrong Washington Elementary in the GPS. So, you know, I, you know, directed them upon their way. She was taking her son to a weekend basketball camp. And I go back into the building, and I say to Antonia, I said, that is one of the reasons why we don't want to bring you and move out of the city of Lorraine, because you, Antonia, as a white female, you know, you can go anywhere in this city, and even in the rougher parts of the neighboring city where my wife's relatives lived, and no one would think anything otherwise. But at the same time, we could go to any suburban setting, any restaurant, any open mall or enclosed mall, and no one would make the comment that you just made about that family and say, "Oh, they're lost. They don't fit in this environment." And I think that code switching, that is what I wanted to tell her, and that's what I wanted to teach her. And she carries that throughout her collegiate experience now. But I think that's something that we were able to do as her parents, but both of our children, both of our girls were able to do for themselves.
Oh, very nice. Thank you for that, John. What about you, Tim?
Well, I definitely hug more with people outside of my family. But absolutely, I mean, I'll be honest with you. Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing I've learned is that when I go into a community, whether it's Springfield, Massachusetts, that's heavily Hispanic, or if I'm in East Boston, the one thing I used to do 3 or 4 years ago was that I wasn't aware of, like I said, I wasn't aware of my presence or how I was perceived. So I would actually almost go into that a situation. I don't want to say like an unconscious savior position, you know, of how I would speak to people. Whereas now I am very, I don't want to say I'm definitely more affectionate, but I also listen a lot more now too, to what people have to say. Whereas when I'm with my family, my Irish Catholic family, I'm not as animated and I'm not as affectionate. You know, if I'm out with my girlfriend's family, that's Hispanic, or if I'm out with some families, people are talking and they're eating and they're dancing, they're having fun, and I'm having a good time. I get to my family's house, oof, we eat, we don't talk, not at the same time. So it's definitely two different things. So yeah, I definitely carry myself a different way with my family. But just to John's point, I'm aware at the same time that really no matter where I go, you know, I can really act however I want to, you know, without fear of really any negative circumstances.
Yeah, I remember that reminds me, I remember my wife and I were just dating. I think I may have told the story before, but we were in a department store in Orange County, sort of an affluent area. And we went there a couple weekends in a row. We're looking for furniture, you know, newlyweds, I guess. And I said to her, I said, you know, every time I come, I get no attention. And at that point, she was like, there's no way. That's coincidental. There's no way. And I want to say I dressed up the next time. And then I did get some attention. Then I came back with sweats on. I got no attention. And so that was kind of her first glimpse on the kind of a world that I'm living in, the kind of experience that I believe I'm having. And it's not that I have this like trauma, like this little, thing that I'm created, right? This is actually happening. This isn't somebody else's experience. This is my experience. And so when we think about that, what advice would you give new dads? What would you give new dads who are now having to, really manage this life of polarization? I mean, that everybody's got to pick a side politically, socially, economically, in some regard. What made you in the olden days, right, be who you are now? What would you advise them at this point? How about you, Mike?
Yeah, know who you are. I mean, you can't even begin to enter into other environments and navigate those if you're not true to and know who you are relative to your value system. What hills you're willing to die on, and then also as an educator, I would say to young fathers out there, continue to learn. One of the best things that has happened to me is my wife, for a lot of reasons, but because of her continuous lessons to me and slowing me down and pushing me to get out of myself, and look at the world try to look at the world not only through my lens, but others, and in turn she does the same. So choose wisely, fathers. I guess that's even before you become a father. Choose wisely with who you lay down with, and decide to navigate this path with too. So because to me, I'm only as strong as my better half, right? She makes me better, and if you don't choose wisely, then that crab in the bucket theory. We just have to be. So those are my little bits of advice, and that's what's kind of helped me navigate. And that was something that was shared with me from my father. So like now I have a responsibility, going back to what I was saying earlier, to share that with my daughter and son. Like, know who you are, know who we are. Like my dad used to always say to me, well, your name is Scott. When you leave this house, you remember that your name is Scott and what we represent and who you are. So I don't care what anyone else is doing, how anyone else is acting out there. You know who you are. So that's been, the points that has helped navigate me through tough times. And at points when I fail, that's the reflection tool too, right? To be able to say, yeah, I did this decision and I forgot who I was momentarily.
Like that. I know that my dad used to say, rest in peace, he used to say, veas en ese espejo. And you would say with that sort of lilt at the end, it really means look yourself in the mirror. But it's kind of reminding you to not forget who you are, like you were saying, Mike. I agree with that. How about you, Tim? What advice would you give those new dads?
Honestly, I'm going to steal Mike's answer earlier, just to I try to teach my kids love, no matter what, race, color, whatever, because I guess this is saying how much I've learned from this show is that, 20, 30 years from now, I have so many regrets looking back, growing up in an all-white neighborhood, very privileged life. I look back and things I said or did that I have regrets about around race and ethnicity, and I tell my kids that 20, 30 years from now, you're going to remember maybe not necessarily the things you did, but how you did it and how you treated people. And you want to look back and say, I treated everyone with love. I did the best I could. I wasn't hurtful. And just understanding that everyone comes from different places. And again, just you want to look at yourself in the mirror at the end of your life.
Well said. How about you, John?
Along with that self-love, my advice to young fathers is I'm going to bestow upon them the advice that my dad gave me and continues to give me, and that is simply is you are worthy, and so are other people. Everybody else is worthy too. And when I say you are worthy, I say that because my dad would make sure that we knew that we provided worth to not only the people around us, but the people that we haven't even met yet. And Jose, there are times where I I remember being a young assistant superintendent and going to my first, you know, district-wide or county-wide superintendent's meeting and thinking like, wow, like, and then I had to come back to what my father would always say, like, you are worthy. You're worthy to be here. You're worthy to be in this setting. You add value to this. And so does everybody else around you. And I carry that with me whenever I find myself in a new fellowship that takes me, you know, into a new setting where I feel like I'm not, you know, worthy enough of being around all these intelligent and successful people. I have to ground myself into my dad's advice and say, no, I am worthy. I do deserve a seat at this table. And not only do I believe that, but I believe that everybody else that I encounter is worthy and is going to bestow greatness upon, you know, the masses themselves. So, you know, just remember, dads, like, you are worthy and you add value to not only your kid's life, but to everybody that you encounter.
That's really powerful stuff, man. I appreciate that. This is a really good episode. I think we're nearing towards the end. So just to avoid what the late Bernie Mac once said about his niece and nephews, I know them, but I don't know them. What are you going to do this week? What are you going to do this week with your kids in this pandemic? What are you going to do with them? Go ahead, John.
So I'm happy to say that my daughter has fully recovered, and I have a love of running, and I have passed that love on to my daughter Antonia, and she is a cross country star, and she loves to run too. So what we're going to do, because of my usual normal work schedule and her normal, you know, being away at college, is the next very nice day that we have here in Ohio is we're going to go on a long run together.
That's beautiful. How about you, Mike?
Yeah, I'm gonna lift the load. I don't know how to put it any better. Like, you know, my wife grinds every single day, doing the cooking, the cleaning, and the teaching, and, you know, so I'm gonna give her the weekend off to the best I can, right? You know, I need to, you know, lift the load and then, but also, so I think in doing for the kids or with the kids, you know, also making sure that when nap time occurs or when they go to sleep, that I'm spending that quality time too, because that's also serving not only my wife, but, you know, healthy house, healthy spouse, and all that good things. It benefits the kids as well, right? So I gotta make sure that I slow down and give my wife the true love that she deserves. So, and I gotta do better. So.
How about you, Tim? What are you looking forward to with your kids?
Well, first of all, I just want to read some Facebook comments here. On Facebook, everyone's pretty much convinced that Michael Scott is awesome. It's happened. And so way to go, Michael. That's great. But what I'm going to do is, you know, I'm learning more and more about, like, just stopping and sitting down with my kids and spending more time with them. Again, because we are in the house together. And one thing they've been bugging me about for probably 6 months now is sitting down and learning how to Minecraft. And you know what? It's time. I'm going to take the plunge. I've avoided it. I've got it on my phone. I'm going to let them teach me. I'm going to enter into their world, which is a Minecraft term.
That's right.
I'm going to learn about creepers. And I guess I'm not supposed to dig straight up. I'm supposed to dig sideways. And just I'm going to really take a lot of time and spend time with them to do that. And just like, it's funny because they're so excited about it. And I just love that. So I'm going to do something that, honestly, I don't know if I'd make time for that if I was working a normal shift. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, thank you for sharing that tonight. My sons, 2 days in a row, have been mentioning playing this game called Overcooked on the Xbox. And I already been through my marathons of Minecrafting. So I'm going to do it after today. I'm going to get up out of this chair and go do that with them. I haven't had a chance. You could see them kind of asking me real gently, kind of saying, come on, be a dad for once. Stop working so much. So I'm going to do that today for sure. For sure. This was a very powerful show. Thank you for allowing me to be the guest host. I can't wait for the pressure for John. Who's next? Man, it's going to be powerful.
And the bar is up here, man.
What's that?
All right, man.
Come on. This is going to be fantastic. Anything else, Tim?
No, thanks for getting me out of a comfort zone, man. Times 10. Jesus, this is great, though.
I appreciate everybody. It was a great show. Have a great week. Stay safe and clean. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
All set.